Life is comfortable in the ivory tower. You can look down on the rest of the world from your observatory window, seated next to your collection of books chock full of ancient wisdom and quips. And the Jedi Order, they were trapped in this kind of state during the years leading up to the Star Wars prequel trilogy, episodes 1, 2, and 3. The Jedi Council literally sat around at the top of an ivory-looking tower on Coruscant, projecting outward their enlightenment and their supernatural power as they looked out on Coruscant from the council chamber. It sounds really nice. Yes, there were Jedi of action. If you weren't on the council, you were doing missions more regularly and seeing the rest of the galaxy, the real galaxy. But if you moved up to the council, your world would be books, meditation, politics, and endless discussion. This famously is why Qui-Gon Jinn, my favorite Jedi, rejected an offer to join the Jedi Council when a seat opened up. During the Clone Wars period, Jedi Council members did experience more regular deployment into the field, leading many to die in battle. But again, this was not the historical norm for the Jedi. Why am I going on about this? I too like my books. I like my office. I like sitting in it with my books and highlighting things and reading and writing about what I absorb. It's nice and it's very cozy. It's safe. Over the last week, though, I've been faced with a call to leave the coziness of my office and enter a different space. One I would say is a bit more uncomfortable and perilous. I didn't want to answer that call, which I've received now from a number of people in my community, some my neighbors, asking me to consider running for city council in Manassas, Virginia. A lane was open and no one was stepping in to fill it, and that means that the city gets more of the same in terms of leadership. I personally don't want more of the same in the place that I'm living. I thought about all of you here at Geeky Stoics, my writing and my time to be alone and think about these big ideas, and I did not like the idea at all. But then I remembered something. The Stoics were mostly doers. Many of the Roman Stoics at their peak were ivory tower types in that they were privileged and powerful, but they were in the arena, as it were. They were engaged in public life. Seneca, he was an advisor to Emperor Nero, not a great guy, but he was a masterful politician and formerly a Roman senator. You had Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome, not by blood, but by merit. He didn't want the purple robe of the emperorship, and he feared it greatly. Thomas Jefferson famously passed away with a copy of Seneca by his bedside. He believed very much in the Stoic ideal. John Adams wrote with great knowledge and appreciation of Epictetus and Aurelius, and George Washington also kept the words of Seneca close by as he rose through the leadership roles of the Continental Army and the Revolution, to say nothing of Teddy Roosevelt adventuring through the Amazon with meditations in his backpack. Super cool story, by the way. Rolling back the clock a little bit to Greece, the Stoic known as Cleanthes was known to haul water buckets around town on a pole to water the gardens of wealthy homeowners in Athens, and he was mocked relentlessly for working to make a living for himself. A lot of philosophers at the time were known to be clean library dwellers, and Cleanthes was the opposite. He was also known to be a boxer for most of his life before he became the head of the Stoic school in ancient Greece. He succeeded its founder, a man known as Zeno, and was known for doing things with his hands as a means to strengthen his mind. He got out into the world. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote fondly of Cleanthes in his diary, Meditations, saying that one should be a boxer, not a gladiator, because a boxer never lays down his weapon. He carries it around with him wherever he goes. That's a great idea. Stoic philosophy was for people in the field of life. I'm reminded of Luke Skywalker as seen in episode 8, The Last Jedi, where he's mostly given up on life and the fight against darkness, and he's holed up on the island of Ahch-To, hoarding the ancient Jedi texts in a library within a tree. Now, it's not a perfect analogy, but at this time in his life, Luke valued books more than he did the application of what was inside them. He had resolved to die alone on the island and let the Jedi die with him. Yet, he was somehow still really attached to the books. When Master Yoda appears to him to give a much-needed Force Ghost pep talk, Yoda calls on lightning from a tree and sets the tree ablaze, with the library presumably in it. And Luke is horrified, and Yoda laughs, and he reminds Luke that these are just old books, they're not page-turners. The truth, which Luke does not know, is that Rey, one of his sort of half-pupils, snuck the books out of the library before leaving the island just a few hours before. And as the tree burns, the books are actually safe, and Yoda knows that, but he wants Luke to feel something real, the pain of letting them go. We are called to be leaders in the world. Books and studies are for hobbits in the Shire. The goal for each of us, geeky Stoics, should be to take those books and their ideas on the road and on great adventures. And of course, we will miss the simplicity of our old life. Bilbo Baggins certainly did. But these are not works of fiction for the purpose of leisure. The books on my desk, right now I've got Seneca, here's my Bible. These are field manuals. You take them out into the real world. And y'all, I am terrified, honestly, of what life looks like from now until November when America goes to vote in the 2024 election, because I'm going to be on the ballot in Manassas for city council. And until then, I'm going to be spending more time out in the city talking to my neighbors and asking people to support me in my candidacy. I have some ideas for the city that I'm very excited about. And I really just want to be an open ear for everybody in my community who feels like the city council doesn't listen to them. In the months ahead, I anticipate being verbally attacked, maligned in mailers, and gossiped about on weird Facebook group pages run by the opposition. And I know myself, and I know that I like to be liked. It's going to hurt when the slings and arrows start flying from people who I've never met, and the entrenched local politicians who take offense that anyone would dare challenge their leadership or lack thereof. I love this bit from comedian John Mulaney in his Netflix special where he talks about how his wife is awesome because she doesn't care one bit about what people think of her. I say this often about my wife, Mel, who ran fearlessly for the city school board in 2022. She took really cruel attacks from both sides of the aisle with such stoic grace. It was amazing to watch. And Mulaney goes,
"When my wife walks down the street, she does not give a shit what anyone thinks of her in any situation. When I walk down the street, I need everybody all day long to like me so much. It's exhausting. My wife said that walking around with me is like walking around with someone who's running for mayor of nothing."
And then he goes on to describe how he once got a Best Buy rewards card because he didn't want the employee to be mad at him. Classic, and I relate. I am more like John. I am energized by bringing people together and finding common ground in a divisive world. That lights me up inside. But I have learned good and well that in politics, the arena, there are people who are fueled by the opposite. They love division, foolishness, and slander. And they wake up every day with a sense of paranoia and suspicion. And I think power does this to people, even in small local elected offices, maybe especially in small local elected offices. So I'm reminded of something that is said by Marcus Aurelius. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil, or maybe you might say right or wrong. This is one of Marcus Aurelius' observations about dealing with difficult people. And I'm going to wrap this up by tying all of these different things together. So to close, I want you to meditate on this passage from Marcus Aurelius, where after he finishes speaking about what to expect from difficult people throughout the day, he sort of gives a more hopeful way to end it, because he's not being cynical or crude when he says that there are going to be fools and ill will found in every day of your life. That's just reality. But what he says after this passage is so important, and often it gets left out when this is quoted. So he reminds himself and us, the readers who he never anticipated having pour through his personal diary, that even amidst stupidity and malice, our human duty is to work with others in a gracious spirit. That is what we are designed to do. We forgive the slights and attacks because as students of philosophy, children of God, we know that we are meant for cooperation with others, just as our hands and our feet and our eyelids strive to work in sync together. He describes people like parts of a body. We are meant to coordinate. That's what nature demands of us. The quote goes, "But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother, not in the physical sense, but as a fellow creature similarly endowed with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of those things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading. Neither can I be angry with my brother, a fellow human being, or fall foul of him, for he and I were born to work together, like a man's 2 hands, feet, or eyelids, or the upper and lower rows of his teeth. To obstruct each other is against nature's law, and what is irritation or aversion but a form of obstruction?" So this is something that I'm going to be carrying with me here in the weeks and months ahead. People are going to come after you. There are going to be people who don't like you. There are going to be people who just make it their business to gossip and whisper and say things that they shouldn't about people in their community. But my duty, and the duty I think of everybody who reads this newsletter, Geeky Stoics, is to remember that we are meant to cooperate. And even when people make it hard, that's where you get the opportunity to live out some of the values and the virtues that we talk about here so regularly. The point of going outside, the point of engaging in the world, engaging in politics, in civics, is to put to practice the things that we say we believe. And that's what I'm going to do. Y'all have a great week. We'll be back here soon with more.